Okay, this is Distortion number 2 from Aliexpress. It's one of those pedal kits that I've been playing around with. Again, we're using the Epiphone Valve Senior amp, two 6v6s. I've turned it down just because this pedal is so hot and aggressive. We'll just give you a little bit of a clean tone. And we'll turn it on. We have a volume tone which seems to affect mostly the mids, and then we have the drive knob, and this thing is aggressive. Mind you, this has a lot of gain in it. We're playing at a volume that I think is comfortable for the camera, and yet I'm getting, some rage feedback. And this is a Les Paul that doesn't normally do that, so very, very, very high gain. Take a look just where the drive goes. We'll start the drive at the bottom here. And just give us a open E chord. You can see it's almost to nothing. Right in. So even at the bottom we have plenty of drive. And the drive level appears to directly affect the amount of bass in the signal. The tone knob really affects the mid-range, and it'll really affect that mid-range feedback squeal. And mind you, this is not turned up that loud. So this is a very, very aggressive pedal. Definitely different than Distortion number 1. This is a lot more, like I say, this is the super high gain. Distortion number 1 was almost a little to the pleasant side and less raucous, and this is a more raucous sounding distortion pedal. But really cool. I think this is one of them you kind of have to twiddle with depending on what guitar you put in to find the settings, but hey, it works good and sounds fine to me. And like we usually do, I have sort of an expedited version of the build following our little demo here. I think it's, instead of being the typical 2-hour mess, it's probably only about 40 minutes, I think, something like that. We'll find out when we load the film out of the camera. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the build. It's a pretty straightforward build. The only real issue is getting everything to fit in the box, which can happen sometimes. Thanks. Okay, good afternoon, YouTube. Okay, so we're going to do Distortion number 2. It comes in this pretty cool looking dragon themed box, and we have a bunch of stuff. Unlike previous videos, I'm trying to save a little bit of time and camera battery, so I'm going to shut the camera off during redundant parts. I've already sorted my parts ahead of time, so that saves time. The interesting difference I see here is on our circuit board there's a spot here for a transistor which does not appear on our instruction manual. So I'm assuming we just don't need that at all. Other than that, it looks like it's going to be a pretty straightforward build. So just like before, we're going to just start with resistors. I'll set that off to the side here so I can reference it if I need to. So our first one here is 47R. So we'll start with that. We'll put these in place. And to try to keep things going while I'm placing the one resistor, I'm actually perusing the board for the next one. There's a 47R right there. Not necessarily trying to set any speed records because it's better to do it right than it is to do it wrong a few times. But I enjoy that success of firing it up and having it work right the first time. And when I first got this board out and looked at the board and my components, I said, where's that transistor? But considering that transistor doesn't appear on the instructions, apparently it's not required for this circuit. I wonder what would happen if we went and found a 2N54 or 58 and stuck it in there. Would it get louder? I don't know. Or would it get fuzzier? What would it do? I don't know. That's okay. Alright. This one, 500R. It's actually a little tricky to read. I took the time to sharpen the tip on my soldering iron, so hopefully I won't make as many bridges as I did before. Okay, I see a 560R, not a 500R. Let's double check this again and see what the handwriting is, because it was pretty small. Yeah, that looks like 560R. And once we stick it in here, you know, I'm sure the electronics people are like, why aren't you checking the colors? And yeah, green, blue, 5.6, yeah, 5.6, okay. We're fine. I can check the colors, but it's low light and they're already labeled. Give me a break. Okay, so that looks like 1.5K. Yep, 1.5. Where's that go? Where's that go? There it goes. The board itself seems to be clearly labeled enough. I've had other kits that weren't quite as friendly. They just marked the board as R1, R2, R3. This one is the 1 meg. And when they do that, then you're constantly referencing the diagram and it makes it take forever. So it says 1M, so we'll put a meg resistor there. And let's see, where's the next one? 1M. And there should be one more one. There we go. 1M. Helps if I can actually get a grip on the solder, huh? I'm actually interested, coming up in probably a week, we're going to do a Velleman optical tremolo kit. That should be really cool. It'll be interesting to see how the optical one works. It actually has an opto photoresistive circuit in it like a vintage amplifier would, which I think is super cool. We'll see if that works better than our transistor circuit that we did last video. always seems to be that when I try to do this many resistors at once, I always miss one, but I don't think so this time. Sometimes I end up having to do a little bit of tidying. But now we're in the situation that goes somewhat like, where did I put my tools? Okay, we'll find the tools. Back in a sec. Sometimes when it's really close to you and just a couple inches from your face is when you can't see it. Of course. Okay, so process of nipping these leads, I see one that doesn't look like a good solder joint. This is another one of these where the solder pads are super small, so using a poor man's big fat cheap soldering iron can be a little clumsy. We can tidy it up afterwards, and it'll only take a moment. Then it'll look really good. It's always advisable once you do one of these rounds of soldering whatevers down to whatevers, just take a moment and double check your work and just look how it looks, because you might find a boo-boo, however minor. You can just take a split second to touch it up. You got a little bit of a solder blob, or you got a little something, you can just chase it right off the end, and then it leaves a really good looking joint. Okay, that's a pretty good round 1 of resistors, and then we'll do round 2 of resistors. So this is 1K. I apologize if my big head is getting in the way of the camera. I wasn't paying attention to that this time. It's probably extra shiny today. I try to be conscious that I'm filming and to not be 1000% silent. There's another place for a 1K in here somewhere. That's a 10K, not a 1K. There it is, right there. What in the world are they doing upstairs at my house? I swear I just saw the lights flicker. And these other resistors are all tangled. So, going at 10K. Last 2 are 100K. This looks like it has a lot of nice even values and not a lot of weird ones. So when you see stuff that has a lot of very common, very even values, it usually is a pretty direct circuit. It's when they have very, very, very specific resistor values and that kind of stuff. It kind of makes me think the circuit might be just a smidgy unstable. Smidgy, is that a word? I don't know. Whatever it is, it sounded stupid. Okay. Get those soldered up. And assuming if you're doing this to follow me along at home, you probably don't need soldering lessons. So, if you wanted me to talk about my in-depth soldering technique, that's probably not a good thing to do. The best advice for soldering is try to be efficient, and be efficient for the sake of your components, because if you sit on them too long with the soldering iron, something can get roasted. That's not good for anybody. Resistors are usually tough, especially these metal films. Okay, that didn't look too good, so we're going to reheat that one and make sure we got that good bonding. Okay, let's still lay it flat. I've already got a mess on the workspace here because before I started I swept all of the leads from the last project away, and we're already full of cut leads again. It was interesting, I was at the surplus store the one time and I was buying resistors out of the bin, and one of the particular values already had short leads on it. It was like it was made specifically to go into some automated thing that just dropped them into place. See a couple of leads that are just a little long and pokey. Just snip them just a little tighter. Okay, that should complete the resistors. So now we'll move on to the capacitors, which have already been sorted. Let's just take a look at what we have. Some of these are marked as lay down, so that's going to be right across where the jacks go. So let's start with the not electrolytics. So I have one here that says 223. So here's 223. Let's scroll that one outward instead of inward. And then there should be another 223 over here. Yeah, here's 223 again. Make sure, double check that this is 223. There's also a 332 in here, so let's not get dyslexic on us. Okay, we'll place 332 here in a second. That way it's out of our way and we don't have to look at it. That's 102. This one. There's 332. And what else do we have? We have 103. That's 102, so this one, odds are it'll be 103. 103. And yes, I do know the value of these caps, but I'm just trying not to even think about it, because it's more than I care to do at the moment. So where did this one go? This is 102. 102, that's 100 puff. 102, 102. I'm sure somebody at home is screaming right now. That's right in front of your face, doofus. Yeah, there it is, 102. Alright, 102, right there. And then we got these two little ones. So we have 100 puff. Which one of these is 100? That's printed so tiny, I'm assuming it says 100. Let's check the other one. This one clearly says 300, so this should be 100. Sometimes you get these where they're a little smudgy, and you can stick them in your tester if you're really worried about it, but generally have had good success just sorting these by process of elimination. you have one that you kind of think what it says. Wait a minute, this is 30p, not 300. Yeah, 300. Okay, that would be 30p. Because the O would be the multiplier. Make sure nothing slips back. When I flip it, everything's generally staying in place. Now we have a bunch of caps to solder down. One of the tricks I do sometimes if I get a little bit of a solder blob is I can get it to just spread out and chase up the lead when I run the soldering iron up the lead. And then I just end up clipping the blob off the in the first place. In an ideal world, I should probably be using a little bit thinner solder size, so it feeds a little slower. But what do you think this is? Looking okay. We will actually be upgrading the soldering iron very soon, because something good just went on clearance. And that's awesome. So, the plan is to get a variable temperature weller, not necessarily the super duper luxury model, but something better than that thing. Okay, now we're on to electrolytic caps. Of course, we have to be aware of the polarities. So let's start with the big boy, the 100 mic. It's a 100 mic 50 volt cap. The plus is over here, so we put the minus stripe away from that. Start with that big boy. Okay. Next we have a 1 mic. That is a 4.7 mic, so this should be our 1 mic. Let's look. 30 volt 1 mic, so the plus is over here, so put that one down there. Okay, that one kind of rides a little high. See if we can get her to ride in there a little bit better. Let's see, there's a 4.7 over here. And that one is slated to be laid down, so we'll do that. Let's double check that that is indeed the 4.7 before we put in the hole. Yeah, 4.7. If you ever have any, forgetfulness on the scenario, while you're working. Just stop and look. It's okay. Take a break. Despite the fact that I'm trying to get this done in good time for the sake of a video, it's not any excuse for you to race through this at home and oof. So you and I have the same goal in mind. To make a thing and then have the thing work. Here's another 4-7. Let's double check that that's indeed a 4-7, and it is. Because if your thing doesn't work, then you wasted a lot of time at home or on the workbench or whatever, doing whatever you were doing, and then your thing doesn't work, so that's sad. So this should be a 1 mic, yeah, 50 volt 1 mic. The print on these 1 mics is tiny, so get your magnifying glasses out, kids. You're gonna need them, at least for those 1 mics. And then the last one is a 2-2. And despite the fact that process of elimination says this is the only one left, there we go. We're going to check it anyway because we do. That way, if I put another one in a wrong position, I'll go, hey, look, the only component I have left is the wrong one. Did I goof somewhere else? And these are a little closer together. The lead spacing's a little tighter, so try to be mindful. To not make a bridge. Solder bridges are bad, okay. The only thing that should connect component A to component B, unless otherwise specified, like in that tremolo, where we had to add a few wires to make it work. At least they posted it, but still. If you haven't watched the end of that tremolo video, if you're thinking about making that tremolo, by all means, you don't have to watch the whole video because it's a little boring. Watching some guy in a basement soldering and talking gibberish. But at the end of the video, where you figure out why our circuit didn't work initially, that's priceless if you're going to be building this thing. Okay, the only things left to solder on are the pots, the LED, the chip, but the chip comes in a socket. That's actually good. See, the chip's got a bent pin, so I'll have to straighten that up. This chip is a, let's see how to read, LM308 and K8430B. I'm not going to look that up, but I'm almost confident it's an op amp, because that's what they all are. But we do have a chip socket, so we're going to put our chip socket in. And to try to get those to stay flush on the board can kind of be a headache. So I'm going to try to cheat a little bit. And give each of those pins just a little pinch and get it to want to... Nope, it says forget you, I'm falling right back out. So see if I can get a little bend on there. I want to do a bend on there just to get it to stay, but I don't want to muff my circuit board up. And that's not working. It kind of worked. So what we'll do is we'll do what we did yesterday. We're just going to get a bead of solder on the iron, hold this in with the fingers, and just tack a pin pin tacked down. That should have been enough just to make it tack, and then we'll tack the opposite corner. It doesn't make a really pretty flow joint or anything, but it's enough to keep it pinned down while you do the rest of them, and then you come back and touch those up at the end. And when you're holding it down, by the way, don't put your finger right on the other side of the thing you're heating up, because that hurts. So don't do that. If you're wondering if I did that, the answer is kind of. I could feel the heat coming through, and that's what reminded me that I was making a big mistake. I would have kept my fingers there. For anybody who's a soldering rookie, it's okay. I was a soldering rookie once before, and I used to put too much pressure on the soldering iron. Now this one I like because it has a ridge and it keeps your hand from sliding forward, but some of the irons we had before, your hand could slide forward and you end up pushing to try to get a little bit better contact, and your fingers slip, and then you grab the hot iron and then you say some words that aren't in the dictionary. That's pretty frustrating. Okay, so technically I don't need to insert my chip yet, but I'm going to anyway, because there's not going to be anything else nearby it that's going to get heated up anytime soon. So, dot on the chip is here to go with the groove there. And of course the pins are still too far apart, so we'll just give them a little bend. Yes, they do make little tools to help you straighten these and adjust these, but this is not an elaborate lab here. This is a guy on a table in a basement, which if you're doing this at home, you're probably a guy or a gal. See, we're inclusive here, politically correct, right? You're probably a nice person at home, at a table, in the basement, or in your kitchen, or somewhere, wherever you work and there's light. You make sure all pins are going into the socket, and then we'll just give her a good press on in. Make sure she sheets down in there good, and close enough for government work. Okay, so now we basically just have jacks and pots and volts and stuff. So what we're going to do here, let's just take a look. The tone pot is an 100K, all pots are 100K, so I need 2 wires on 2 pots and 3 wires on 1 pot. So, okay, I'm not going to film that because that'll waste battery, so we'll just do that and then come right back. Okay, well, I cut the wires for the pots, and then I looked down at my workpiece and realized I still have some diodes here I forgot. So diodes are going to be important because if you don't put them in, it doesn't work. So let's look at our diodes. We have 400, I think that says 4007. What does that say? No, it says 4004. And then the other two are 1N148. 1N148. Yeah, so those are going to be the... Okay, so I got 2 of one kind of diode and 1 of the other. So this being the 4004 would be the silicon diode. I don't even know if it says 4004 on it. 1N4004, yes. So this is a 4004, so this diode goes here. Don't forget the diodes, people, otherwise you're going to end up with a non-working circuit. And then you're going to be going, why in the world doesn't this work? And then you look down and there's diodes laying on your workbench, and then you're like, oh, I made the same mistake that goofball on YouTube made, forgetting to put the diodes in. I didn't forget to put the diodes in, I just remembered a little late, okay? Okay, and then with the diodes, just look for the stripe on these Zeners. It's the black stripe, and on the black silicon diodes, it's the silver stripe. Those on. And with these Zener diodes, be mindful. The shell on these is like a polystyrene maybe, something like that. They can be a little heat sensitive, so try not to fry them, okay? Okay. Don't barbecue your electronic components, they don't like that. Okay, so soldering some diodes, then we'll go back to those wires again. Then we'll take our pause. One pad is awkwardly large on that one end of the silicon diode. Okay, now all the diodes are in. Now I'm going to prep the wires. And I'm going to hope I cut them long enough. I think I did. Because if I look, what we're shooting for here is to be able to go from here to the top of the box. And that one's probably extra long, but let's find the shortest one. And I'll still get to the top of the box, so we're cool, right? I cut these all real quick. I wrapped them around my fingers to get them approximately the same length. Yeah, I know I'm cheating for time. Okay, so got the pots all soldered up here, got leads on them. Now I can put the leads in the thing. So the one with 3 leads is volume, and it's kind of appropriate because there's V1, V2, V3, volume 1, 2, 3. And I'll just put the leads in the board, and then we can solder them on. This board is not too annoying as far as difficulty goes. Seems to be pretty straightforward, and the designer appears to have wanted it to be moderately self-explanatory. It's like they actually want people to buy these and make them. How cool is that? Sometimes with these tinned wires, if they don't want to stay in the holes, you can kind of bend them over. When you tin them good, they turn into sort of a solid core feeling kind of thing, and you can bend them. Just as a reminder to those of you at home, when you're looking at the pin numbers on the pots, it is from the back. So 1 will be on the right. It's labeled pretty well on the instruction sheet. I don't know that I could really call it an instruction manual, but because it's not really a manual, it's just kind of a sheet. But hey, it works, right? So then we have T1 and T2, which are the tone. It looks like I over-tinned a couple of these a little bit. They don't want to go in the holes now. Darn it. That's okay. Okay, that one does. The other one doesn't want to play ball with me. Just trying to push it down there a little bit, and if it fights me, I'll touch it up a little bit. Come on, go in the hole. Okay. This particular one is just being squirrely. And one of the tricks when you over tin them a little bit, you can squeeze them sometimes with a plier and try to round them out if they got a little off round. And if that doesn't work, then we just nip a little bit of the excess solder off of there. See how we did with that. Maybe that helped, maybe it made it worse. I don't know. We'll find out in a second. That seems to have made it a little worse, so stand by. We're going to redo this wire. We're going to just clip a smidgen off and redo it. Okay, so granted I didn't film that, but just now that all the pots are secured, hopefully we can see, we don't have silver poking up above, and we're nice and clean all the way through. So all the pots have been soldered on. The next one I'm going to do is I'm going to do the battery clip, and I'm not going to necessarily film soldering the battery clip. There's a plus minus. We just need to solder that down. And then the lines for the LED, we will do that on camera. So let me do the battery clip and then we'll do the LED. Okay, for our LED, the longer of the two leads is the plus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a tin piece of wire and we're going to drop the LED on the table. No. We're going to take the tin piece of wire and we're going to make a hook like that. And then we can take our hook, slip that on the positive wire, not necessarily right at the end because I don't want it to short out, but within short distance, and we'll pinch it on there, and then we'll touch it with the solder and pin that down, and we'll do the same for the negative lead. But what I will do is I will not clip one of the leads until after I've already got it soldered on the board. That way I don't lose my place. Okay, so I've got wires soldered on the LED, and I left the leg there on the negative, just so I can keep track of which is which. And then there's an LED plus and an LED minus down on the board. So just insert the leads in there respectively, and watch them pop back out. Apparently I didn't tin that good enough because I got a flyaway lead, of course. Flyaway will get tamped down good once we hit it with the iron on the flip side. Okay, so both wires are in. I'm going to hold them with my fingers until we get her flipped over. And then we'll heat that puppy up and get those two soldered on. And if you ever wonder if it's soldered good, just come to the top and try to pull it back out. If you can't pull it back out, with a reasonable amount of pressure, you soldered it good. And then we'll clip the negative lead, or the negative lead's tail, so we know the LED's in. So now we're on to the power and the audio jacks. So we're going to prep the audio jacks. Basically what we've got is on here, we have ground shield, tip, and ring, which is PWC on the input jack and is unused on the output jack. So effectively what this means is ring or shield, both jacks will get a wire, tip, both jacks will get a wire, and we'll put one wire on the ring, or we'll put a wire on the ring of one jack. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back. Okay, so there's a bunch of noise upstairs. Somebody's vacuuming, but we got the jacks all done. You notice the wire color changed. I was being a little bit generous with the included wire, and so I had to go to my reserve pile of extra wire. The output jack, basically you're going to put the tip into, which in this case is the white wire for me. I don't know what it is for you. That's going to go into out tip, and then the other end will go into the ground. And there's two grounds over here on this side. Either one should work fine. whichever one is more convenient for you. And what I'm thinking is, since this output jack is going to lay right about here-ish, I'm thinking maybe right in that area, we'll go to the one that's a little closer as I knock this out of there. And since it's being a squirrel, I'm just going to solder the one side before I go to the next. And I apologize for the distractions. The noise is unnerving me a little bit, so I might take a pause and try to. Okay, now the output jack is on, that's good. For the input jack, there's three pieces here. There's one that says PWC in ring, that's going to be the ring connector on here, and then your in tip will be the tip there, and then PWB is going to go to the power jack, so then you'll put the third one to ground. So your outside is going to go to ground, the tip will go here, and the PWC in ring will be the ring of your jack. So we'll solder that on and then we'll come right back. Okay, so both of our input jacks are on. The only things left to do are the power jack and the foot switch. We're going to do the foot switch because the power jack has to be inserted into the box before we can seal it down. Basically, the way this is tapered, it's going to fit right in there the way it goes, and you're going to want to get it in there flat. So we're going to use the same sort of tacking technique I used with the chip, where we're just going to put a ball of solder on the end of our iron, and then we're just going to hold this into position with our fingers, and then just stick the iron on there for 3 seconds and let it cool. And that blob of solder is going to be enough to pin it in place. I believe we got, I'm going to do that on 2 corners just to be sure. Okay, now that's flush to the board, so I'm going to go around and solder all of the pads, including the ones that I tacked briefly. And then we'll go to the power jack. Okay, so we're back. I put the leads on this power jack because you need to do that because this one has the nut on the back side. I think you can technically order these with the nut on the other side, so if you do have some of those laying in your bin, maybe you want to use those instead. But we're going to just use what's in the kit, make it work. So it's going to go here, and I made the leads extra long, which is going to make it easier initially, but harder to get everything stuffed in the box. It's going to make everything a tighter fit because I got to jam all these wires and fold them on top of each other. So it might be a better idea to use a little bit shorter lead. Depends on what you're feeling. And you only learn by doing it, and this is the first model DS-2 I've done. So I'm not sure how well this is going to stuff in the box. We're going to find out though. I'll spin that on, and then we'll give it a little wrench to put it in place. Remember, this is plastic, so you don't want to crank the heck out of it, just enough to make sure it ain't going to fall back out on you. Okay. Now, effectively, we just want to look at our diagram that we have here. One of these goes to PWC on the board, one goes to 9 volt, and one goes to PWB, which is on, or I'm sorry, PWC is going to go on the input jack. So let's figure out which one is which. This one right here is the one that goes to PWC. So this is going to go to the ring of the input jack. So to make that easier to do, I'm just going to pre-tin that really thoroughly. You can kind of get that one, you can over tin that a little bit if you want to, because it doesn't have to go through any holes. And then this is the input side, so this has to go to the ring connector, which is this one right here. We got plenty of solder on there, and it should have enough rosin and everything else. If we just do a touch, they should have fixed themselves. There we go. Ain't going anywhere. And then let's see, this one goes to 9 volt, this one goes to PWB. So PWB is, this lead goes here. See if I can get it now. I know this isn't a great visual, but I was trying to give you perfect visuals and do a detailed instruction video. It'd take me like 9 hours to film this, and this is not a monetized YouTube channel. This is just some guy in his basement that likes to make stuff. And if anything, I hope this video gives you encouragement. If you were kicking around making something like this, you'll feel that you actually could do this. Because if you own a soldering iron and a couple of normal everyday tools, there's really no reason you shouldn't be able to do this. Okay. So that should more or less complete our journey, other than stuffing it all in the box. So we'll stuff it in the box, and then we'll cover the bottom of the board with electrical tape before we put the bottom cover on. And that should be about our journey. If you want to watch the process of stuffing one of these in the box, I suppose you should just look at the tremolo video, because watching me do this multiple times isn't worthwhile. So thanks for watching. See you soon.